Hello there. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the show. Yes, I made it back to Colorado at the very least. I will be back in studio for tomorrow's show. Ray, you could take me out of my ears there. Thank you. Um, so no major travel issues to report today. Pretty smooth sailing out of Reno. Would have liked it to all told be a better trip. Talk about that coming up through the course of the program. But glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or perhaps you're listening on one of those two station streaming apps, which are free to download and free to use. And they are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. We waited 12 years for this, which is NHL players back in the Olympics. Now, I am one who is largely in favor of the amateurism that exists within the Olympics, much like I am generally for the amateurism that has existed for a long time in the NCAA. But I am also a realist, and I also can understand that things change, the world evolves. And I think what I like most as an American, and I feel like it's, paramount to who we are as a country, I like winning. I'd like to do as much winning as I can. And yes, the miracle on ice will forever live in American sports lore, and it's a phenomenal story. But there was also a different backdrop with that, right? If you look at it just every 4 years, there's not that geopolitical, undertones with it, right? And also too, it makes it so special that one time a bunch of teenagers were able to beat a team full of professional grown men on the Russian team. But you can't sustain that. You can't replicate that. So let's just have the best players. Let's just do that, because when Russia gets back into the Olympics, they're just going to throw out a bunch of KHL guys. They're not going to pay any attention to whether the NHL sends their players or not. And I want the best players out on the ice. And it's not this way for every sport. Right? Like, the best skiers are the best skiers. There's no amateur skiers, and like, we are getting the best in all of these sports. And I think that's really what the Olympics are about. Right? Best on best, your country against my country. And it's different dynamics because there are professional leagues when it comes to hockey, both on the men's and the women's side. Same can be said for basketball during the summer. I want to see best on best. And the only way you do that is if the NHL agrees to send their players to the Olympics. And what we have gotten hasn't been the most compelling hockey so far, save for the Sweden-Italy game yesterday. But therein lies again, like, what a great story Italy was, because they were going up against a bunch of NHL players and were giving them everything they could handle. It hasn't been, other than that, the most compelling hockey, because there is a separation of powers that go on in the hockey world. But you see the best players in their given sport competing. And that's what you want to see in the Olympics. And what it has given us today is the idea that we are very much on track for that USA Canada gold medal game that we so desperately wanted the minute that the Four Nations ended. Earlier today, Canada blew out Czechia, which is a massive win. I know Canada's better than Czechia, but Marty Natchez and company were supposed to give Canada at least some resistance. They gave them none. And Canada wins 5-0 earlier today in that game. Nathan McKinnon had one goal. He had another one that was overturned. A lot of goals overturned today, both in the Canada game and the USA game that is currently going on. But Nathan McKinnon gets a goal today as Canada beats Czechia 5-0. And my biggest question about Canada was not the firepower that they have. I mean, Celebrini, Stone, Horvat, McKinnon, Suzuki, it's not even all of their best players. Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Cale Makar, these guys all assisted on goals, but they didn't score any. So I look at Canada and say offensively, they may have more to give throughout this tournament. But my biggest question for them was Jordan Binnington in goal. I thought that could be the advantage for the U.S. as we fast forward to the gold medal game. That could be the advantage for Team USA. Because I just don't think the U.S. has the same level of firepower as Canada does. Well, Binnington was fantastic against a decent Czechia team. I don't think Czechia was in contention for a medal, but it's a solid team. And Canada just overwhelms them in every facet of the game today. Now, right now, the U.S. just underway in the third period, they have a 4-1 lead over Latvia, which, with all due respect, is not even the level of team that Czechia was for Canada. The story in this game is Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson right now has a pair of goals, and he could have 4. That's how good and impactful he has been on the ice today for Team USA. And remember, this is a third-generation Olympian. And I saw his interview just before I went on air with Catherine Tappan, where he talked about the emotions that he had taking the ice. And you may have seen the viral video of Bill Guerin, the Team USA GM, calling him up, kind of giving him a hard time. But you could tell, even though it was a lighthearted conversation, you could tell how much it meant to Brock Nelson that he gets to represent his country and his family on this stage. And man, that dude is all over the ice today as Team USA scores again to make it 5-1. Austin Matthews gets the goal. So U.S. matching Canada in terms of their output with 5 goals. But Brock Nelson scores 2 in the second period. He could have had 4. 1 was overturned because of goaltender interference, and 1 clanged off the post. And he could have had an assist on the first goal or the second goal of the game for Team USA that was overturned because of an offside call on Brock Nelson. So Brock Nelson certainly has his fingerprints all over this game today. But easily could have 4 goals and an assist. Now, as far as the calls are concerned, he was clearly offside, so no problem there. The goaltender interference to me was a little bit more letter of the law than the intent of the law. And what happened was a U.S. player gets kind of bumped by a Latvian player, goes into the Latvian goaltender who is plays for the Columbus Blue Jackets, bumps him, and then he doesn't get right out of the crease. He kind of hangs around, and then the shot comes in. It was redirected, looked like it was redirected. The goaltender would have had no chance. So that's why I say it's letter of the law and not intent. The intent is if the goaltender can't make a play on the puck. Well, the shot was such as the goaltender had no chance. But letter of the law, he was in the crease. He bumped him, made contact shortly before the shot came in. So ticky-tack, I think, is a fair way to put it. But, and you thought at the moment, so Latvia successfully challenges 2 goals, gets them overturned. They also kill off a power play at the end of the first period. And if this were, let's say, an NHL game, you would say, oh, that's huge. Latvia gets 2 goals overturned. The U.S. has got to be feeling a little bit disappointed about it. And then Latvia, late in the first period, kills a penalty to give them a bit of momentum. But because the talent disparity is so great, the feeling that you actually had after the first period was it's just a matter of time before the floodgates open. And that has indeed been the case. U.S. gets 3 goals in the second period to go up 4-1. And as I said, they just added one from Austin Matthews to make it 5-1, 15-20 to go in period number 3. So, yeah, both of these teams look as advertised here in their first game of the prelims. There's also another aspect of these games today that the irony of it all is a little humorous if you're an Avalanche fan. Nathan MacKinnon scored on the power play today. Brock Nelson scored on the power play today. Avalanche players not only making a huge impact in their respective games, but doing it on the power play. If you're an Avs fan, you got to laugh to keep from crying. Because even with arguably the best player in the world, another guy in Cale Makar that's among the top 5 conservatively, and then you have Brock Nelson as well, who's an extremely talented player. The fact that they can't, playing together, get goals, but playing for their respective countries they can, it's a little funny. But in that, and I talked about this yesterday, that I would very much like to watch the power plays of these two teams, especially when Avs players are on the ice, and figure out, like, what's going on here. And I figured it out. Okay, so hear me out on this. In order for the Colorado Avalanche to start scoring on the power play when they come back from the Olympic break, all they need to do is trade for Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. That's it. That's all. They do that, and their power play becomes unstoppable. That's it. Not too much to ask, I would say, from Chris McFarland. All you got to do is trade for one of the best players of his generation, well, 2 of the best players of their respective generations, and one guy that is the title holder for best player in the world right now. That's it. Now that you could give up, let's see, for Sidney Crosby, you got to give up something to get something. So even though Brock Nelson scored on the power play, positionally, it makes sense. You trade Brock Nelson for Sidney Crosby, and then you trade Sam Girard for Connor McDavid, and you're good to go. Which flies in the face of what I have theorized to be the remedy for the Avs power play. Because I thought less talent. So, or maybe what it is you either have to have the most talent that has ever been on the ice at one time in a hockey game, or you got to go the route I said and get more grinders in that power play. And since I do not foresee the Avs landing Connor McDavid, and Avs fans have been trying to put Sidney Crosby on the Avs for years now to no avail, I think their only path forward is the way I'm saying. But that Nathan MacKinnon goal, I mean, it was, I know I'm not supposed to like Canada or root for Canada, but I feel like your team affiliation is okay when it's Canada versus Czechia. And you have Taves, Makar, and McKinnon, which outweighs Marty Necas on the other side. It was a thing of beauty. It was Makar to Crosby, Crosby to McDavid, and McDavid's on one post, Nathan MacKinnon's on the other, and Connor McDavid just slightly elevates the puck enough to get it over the goalie to Nathan MacKinnon, who bats it in. I forget the name of the Czechia goalie, but like, what do you do? What do you do? Makar to Crosby to McDavid to MacKinnon. That's just it. It's not fair. But yeah, US and Canada are going to there's going to be a sense here as we move forward that they're just, and even now they're showing highlights of the fight in the Four Nations. I mean, this is inevitable. And on our way to get to this inevitable matchup between Canada and the US. I think the US and Canada are going to be dismantling every opponent they go up against. Yes, because they're that much better, but also there's going to be a tit for tat, I think, going on. And I hope somebody, Catherine Tappan or my buddy Sam Farnsworth, who trying to get him on the show once this game is over, because he's out there in Italy. I hope someone asks them the question. Either a Canadian player or a US player, preferably both. Are you watching what the other team is doing and trying to match it? I don't know if they're going to answer honestly, but I think they are. I think they will continue to do so. This is like, you know, one of those movies, and there's a scene like this in so many movies. I think in some Marvel movies, there are these kind of scenes where the mortal enemies, right? The main bad guy, the main good guy, they're on a battlefield. And there's quite a bit of distance between the two of them. And they spot each other from across the battlefield. And they kind of lock eyes, and it's like, yeah, it's going to be you and me here. And then what they do is they just eviscerate guys on both sides, just to, you know, just tossing them aside, punching, kicking, all of this kind of stuff, just to clear a path to get to one another. That's what we have going really on both sides, the men's and the women's side. It just so happens that the women, the way that their tournament is set up, we got US Canada early. But on the men's side, they're not going to see each other till it matters the most, till everything is on the line. And in the meantime, I feel for every single team that goes up against these two juggernauts. Still 5-1 US. Again, Brock Nelson with a pair of goals, 11:42 to go in the third. Keep you updated on that. And as I mentioned, Sam Farnsworth used to work at KKTV. For those of you who are not familiar, now he's doing television in Salt Lake City, regular over in the Olympics, summer or winter. And he has been kind enough to try to make some time for us as we move throughout the program. In the meantime, it's you and me at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, kind of stick with the U.S. versus a different country narrative, because the question is, who is to blame for the All-Star game getting the way it has gotten? Kevin Durant has some thoughts, and it's coming your way next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Cold Hard Cash is heating up your February. We're giving 5 winners $1,000 each, 5 chances to score big and turn winter into winning. Just head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com and enter this national contest for your chance to win Cold Hard Cash. Sponsored locally by Hot Wheels Monster Truck Live, coming February 28th to the Broadmoor World Arena. This weekend, if you can't get enough of us versus everybody, us being USA versus everybody, you're going to get a form of this in the All-Star game. It's not going to be individual countries, but it will be Team USA, 2 different Team USAs, kind of an older and a younger Team USA, and they're going to be taking on Team World in the All-Star game, in the latest attempt by the NBA to salvage a dying product. Now, Kevin Durant, who is on the old head team, even though I'm older than Kevin Durant and I refuse to think of myself as an old head, he's on one of the Team USAs. And he was asked the question whether, because it is now Team USA versus Team World, that he and other NBA superstars on the American side are going to give a little bit more. Here's Kevin Durant, an on-brand answer from one of the snarkiest athletes that we have in professional sports today. Go ahead, Ray. So, where was that audio from, Ray? So we can give proper credit. We'll do that. So first of all, and for those of you watching the live stream, you did not hear what Kevin Durant said, but basically he's like, you need to talk to Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic because they're not trying either. Now, Kevin Durant is 100% right. And if you listen to this show, you will know that I have juxtaposed Jamal Murray going out to LA on a mission to play hard and to save the NBA from the nonsense that goes on All-Star weekend. And I have juxtaposed that with Nikola Jokic because one of the most unserious players in recent All-Star games has been Nikola Jokic. And it's like, I had a friend when I was growing up, just the one. And there came a point where we had to be separated. We were so disruptive to the rest of the class that our teachers could not bear the thought of us being in close proximity. But sometimes news doesn't travel fast, and sometimes there's no choice. And when me and my friend would be together in class, we'd almost make up for the lost time because we were separated in other classes and be more disruptive and goof off even more. That's the dynamic between Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic. They don't get to play with each other all the time. In fact, this is their only chance to do it. And they make the most of it by just goofing off and clowning each other the entire time. Kevin Durant is 1,000% correct. Two of the biggest offenders of this right now are Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic. And I hope that Jamal Murray has a positive effect on Nikola Jokic. because it could be really fun to watch the two of them do that two-man game that you and I see on a nightly basis for the Nuggets with other all-stars around. They are a byproduct of what has been going on in the NBA for a while. That's the thing. That's the difference. So while I understand Kevin Durant's side of it, and I do think that we don't want to turn this into this is NBA players, right? What you see are NBA players, regardless of nationality, going out to wherever All-Star Game weekend is and making a mockery of it. Whether they're from Serbia, Slovakia, Canada, Slovenia, Mexico, the United States, they all do it now. But what Kevin Durant has to understand is that his generation started it. And I spent a fair amount of my flight today from Reno finding out when the exact moment was where all this happened. And I found it and I screenshotted it. I can maybe show you on the live stream. So this is the 2014 All-Star Game. It's in New Orleans with 6:46 to go in the third quarter. The Western Conference is up 113-95. Okay, the best players in the world, and they're on both sides. But if one team is up 20 past the midway point of the third quarter, the game should be effectively over. Not to say that the East can't come back and make it interesting, but that game should be over. It wasn't. And the Eastern Conference rallied to win that game. That is the moment where all of this started. Where defense, even the defense, and I understand, like, we never had this utopian All-Star game where guys are picking each other up full court. Even with, Magic and Bird and Jordan, they didn't lock in for every single possession. Okay, so let's not play revisionist history here. But they played some defense. It didn't turn into – the problem is now it's a skills competition. Right? It's not – little defense has been played in the All-Star game for years. But now it's Steph Curry throwing it over the backboard on an inbounds pass for an alley-oop. It's Steph Curry pulling up from nearly midcourt. It's Kevin Durant doing the same thing. It's LeBron James trying to put on – and the guy doesn't want to be in the dunk contest, yet he pulls out dunk contest dunks in the middle of the All-Star game. Okay, defense has never been a staple of the NBA All-Star game. But they would at least stand in the way of foolishness. Okay, if Magic Johnson is going to do some kind of goofy move, you better believe that MJ or somebody is going to check him and say, you're not doing that. I'm not saying put him on the ground, but just, I'm going to step in front of you, all right? You're not going to do this. From that moment on, in that 2014 All-Star game, that's what it's become now. And the significance of that game is that, one, it was at the height of the Heatles, right? Which is the embodiment of the player empowerment era, where the players in the NBA realize that they hold the cards, that they call the shots, that they aren't beholden to anybody. When LeBron and Chris Bosh went to Miami, that put all of this on overdrive. Okay, and it manifests itself in every facet of the NBA, in contract negotiations, in all-star games and everything, when the players realize that they don't answer to anybody, that's when things got off the rails. So that's factor one, probably the biggest factor. Factor two is the way the game has changed. In fact, I was watching that All-Star game back, and I heard Steve Kerr, of all people, when he was still a broadcaster, talking about what was going on in that All-Star game as emblematic of the direction the NBA is going. And now it's not the direction it's going, it's the direction that it's in. Led by the team he would go on to coach. 3-pointers all over the place. Unlimited range. So you get these guys that are trying these 3-point shots from every angle, from every distance as part of this because they all can shoot. So the way the NBA style of play has gone, overvaluing, or not, I guess not technically overvaluing, but valuing the 3-point shot like they do, player empowerment. And there was one thing in addition to those two things in that All-Star game. Kobe Bryant did not play. Kobe Bryant was a bridge from not the old school, but the older school. He was a bridge between two different generations, the Jordan era and the LeBron era. He was kind of in the middle. Kobe Bryant, just the previous year, in 2013, had the highlights of that particular All-Star game in 2013 when he blocked LeBron's shot, not once but twice. That level of defense, rarely seen. But Kobe was Kobe. And of course, he made every All-Star. I don't think there was one year where he didn't get elected to an All-Star game, maybe early in his career. But when we finally found out who Kobe Bryant was or was going to be, he was elected to every All-Star game, played in almost every All-Star game. He missed the game in 2014 because of an injury. He was the tether between an All-Star game that sure lacked defense, but it felt like just the best players in the world and offense beating defense, to what we have now, which is an abomination. He was the one that was trying to pull that older style of the All-Star game into the newer generation and give that to LeBron and Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and Steph Curry and go down the list. But with him not being in that game, it started. And once he walked away, it got worse. And the only time since 2014 that we have had anything remotely resembling the All-Star game that you and I grew up on was when the players felt the need, and as they should, to honor Kobe Bryant and his legacy by playing hard in the All-Star game. And they instituted the Elam ending. Remember that? That was the only exception to what has now become the rule of NBA All-Star games, which is they are not worth your time. So Kevin Durant can certainly point the finger at Luka and Nikola Jokic and say they're as bad as anybody, and I would be right there agreeing with him. But Luka and Jokic came into this well after it started. They weren't the preeminent stars in the NBA when all of this started. KD was. LeBron was. This is on them. And it is on them. I think it's a fair question to ask Kevin Durant because it will ultimately be on them, but also Luka and Jokic to try and get it back. I think this is the only format that can possibly work. East, West, old guys, young guys, the only thing that could possibly save the All-Star game from becoming basically the Pro Bowl is this format. So if this weekend it doesn't happen, it never will. And it will be effectively the death of the NBA All-Star game. It's been dying a slow death, but we'll be able to call it if this doesn't work and we don't get compelling basketball this weekend out in LA. Take your thoughts on Kevin Durant's comments. Where did it start for you, and where's your interest level going into this one? 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports, and an update from Team USA against Latvia. That game has just gone final. We'll talk about it next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Get ready, Colorado Springs. The loudest, fastest, craziest show on ice is coming. Extreme International Ice Racing hits the Broadmoor World Arena Sunday, February 21st. Nitro-powered bikes, 14,000 RPM, and no brakes. It's pure chaos on frozen ground. Get your tickets now at axs.com. Final from Italy, U.S. hangs on to beat Latvia 5-1. So if you're keeping track at home, the U.S. scores 5 goals today. Canada scores 5 goals today. But Canada shut out Czechia. U.S. did give up 1 to Latvia. A big day, big couple of days. Gabriel Landeskog scored a goal yesterday for Sweden. Brock Nelson had 2 goals today. And Nathan McKinnon had a goal in Canada's win. Cale Makar got an assist on one of the goals for Team Canada. So good so far for the matchup we all want to see, which is the U.S. versus Canada, and good for Avs players out there in Italy. 5-1 U.S. wins, and earlier today, Canada beat Czechia 5-0. U.S. against Denmark coming up Saturday afternoon, their second game of the prelims. Some news today, some sad news, but there is a silver lining in it. Zach Sandy of the Colorado Springs Switchbacks has called it a career, and I'll let the man himself tell you the reason for it. This was from the Switchbacks YouTube page earlier today. Sad to hear, but as he mentioned there at the beginning, he will be on Alan McCann's staff, player development, scouting, some of those kind of things. So he'll remain with the organization. Zach Sandy, when the roster turned over as much as it did, when they moved into the new stadium with Brendan Burke and Stephen Hogan and James Chambers and Alan McCann, who's now the head coach of the Switchbacks, one of their most important additions was a player that they all knew from their Reading United and Philadelphia Union days. It was Zach Sandy. And they brought him in to lead the midfield of the Colorado Springs Switchbacks and to embody everything they wanted the club to be. And Zach Sandy absolutely represented that to a T. The selflessness, the toughness that Zach Sandy had, and right there you hear, I mean, battling through the number of concussions he's had. He's everything that the Switchbacks culture is. And unfortunately, along with his arrival in Colorado Springs came the concussions. And over the course of a handful of seasons here, played in 86 matches, far fewer than he could have had he had been healthy. And it just watching this team, there would be a number of times where Roland Vargas and myself would comment to one another on air and off the air about there were games where, man, they could really use Zach Sandy right now. Or games that he would play, say, man, it's good to have Zach Sandy back. I mean, almost without fail, every time he was either in or out of the lineup, we would still mention him. And Roland and I's favorite line to throw around is, as broadcasters, we don't play favorites, but Zach Sandy's our favorite. Just a joy to watch, a joy to cover, and a great dude. And to see the prime of his athletic career get taken from him like this, it's hard. It's hard to see this happen. It's hard to see this happen to any athlete, but especially one like Zach Sandy. But it unfortunately was a big part of his switchbacks career, is that he was just in and out of the lineup and out of the lineup for long stretches of time before he would come back. But when he was on the field, made a huge impact, scored 12 goals over the course of his somewhat abbreviated switchbacks career. But, I'm not going to sit here and say this is the right or wrong decision. The right decision is what he feels like is the right decision. But we have seen many athletes now come to realize the risk of continuing to come back and trying to fight through concussion after concussion after concussion. So my 2 cents, I certainly don't think this is a bad decision for Zach Sandy. But the silver lining again is that the fact that he'll still be around this organization, and knowing him as a player, he is going to be an extremely successful coach, scout, whatever he decides to do with the switchbacks now and moving forward. He will be incredibly successful at it. So congratulations to Zach Sandy on a tremendous, tremendous career. And going to certainly miss him on the field. And I know that for a fact because we missed him on the field when he was still active, but just injured. You could see the full video from Zach on the YouTube page for the switchbacks, and hope to get him on the show and talk to him a little bit more about this and what's next for him in the coming days. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts, Switchbacks fan, on the career of Zach Sandy. Coming up next, Nuggets finish out the first half, if you want to call it that, of the regular season, going out on a high note against Memphis. The significance of it coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour two on this Thursday. Glad to have you. Shouts to those of you watching the show on our social media platforms, whether it be Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR. Um, and while you're there, like, subscribe, comment. Most importantly, comment. This is an interactive experience on the show on a daily basis. Busy day in Italy as the men's hockey prelims got going. Both Canada and the U.S. pick up resounding victories. Um, I have somebody that can speak to it from a firsthand basis as soon as Ray lets me know that we are good to go. I will go to him. But in the meantime, if you would like to interact in a more traditional way, you could always text or call into the show at 719 247 1313. We'll start this conversation, and then when my guest is on the line, we'll table it and pick it up in a little bit. But the Denver Nuggets last night were able to, like the Avalanche, finish out the first quote unquote half of the season on a high note. And it's been like the Avalanche. The parallels between these two teams are pretty apparent. Both of them were kind of limping into their respective breaks. Now, for different reasons, kind of. I think with the Avs, they honestly have a little bit less of an excuse for the way that they were playing going into the Olympic break. Now, they had their injuries, Gabriel Landeskog chief among them. I get that, but they're not nearly as banged up as the Denver Nuggets are. And the Avalanche weren't playing the caliber of teams that the Denver Nuggets have been playing. We'll get into that a little bit more coming up. In the meantime, doing me a huge favor because he's a great guy, my buddy Sam Farnsworth from KSL TV in Salt Lake. You may know him from his days at KKTV. He joins me from Italy after the U.S. got a 5-1 win over Latvia. Sam, appreciate you, bud. How is it out there? Oh, he dropped. Okay. We'll try to effort Sam. And I said such nice things about him. I guess I'll have to repeat all that then. I would, could be cell service a little bit spotty there with the entire world converging on one area, but Ray will try Sam Farnsworth again and see if we can't chat a little bit with him. If not, we'll set up a less hectic time for Sam to join me and kind of give the lay of the land there from the Olympics. But continuing on with what I was saying about the Denver Nuggets, look, the Nuggets limp into the break, metaphorically speaking and literally, with the injuries. They lose 4 of 6. Thunder, Pistons, Knicks, top team in the West, two of the top teams in the East. Cavs the other night were one of those teams as well that they lost 119 to 117, but they do close out with a win last night against Memphis. And we have some audio from David Adelman. Did we get Sam back on, Ray? Okay. Sam, I said a lot of nice things about you. I'm not going to repeat them. How are you? I still can't hear him. Yeah, I'm not getting anything from Sam. You gotta. We'll see if we can get that connected with me being on remote location. I can't. hear the phone as easily. So we'll try to get that remedied here. We'll table Sam for now, work through some of those issues. If you want to get on the line with Ray and tell him, we'll try again here at the commercial break when we can get me hearing him. But in the meantime, let me continue on here with the Denver Nuggets conversation here. So they're losing to better teams, quite frankly, than the Avalanche have been, and they are more banged up than the Avalanche are. But I think it is, and I've been going back and forth about this. I was just thinking about this driving back from DIA today. I I think with the Avs, there's going to be a feel of starting over almost with this season. Not that what they did prior to the break doesn't count, but it's such a long layoff and everyone's got to get like ramped back up and all this kind of stuff. I almost feel like we're going to have two different NHL seasons. So the Avs getting the win right before the break, I think it was good for them, no doubt about it. But I also at the same time feel like, is there much of anything from a confidence, momentum, whatever you want to call it? I don't know that there is. With the Nuggets, they're just going to take a few days away. So I feel like there has a chance for bad form and not stacking up wins lately to kind of carry over a little bit. So that's where I would say last night's win over the Memphis Grizzlies was an important one. 122 to 116 was the final score there. And I'll tell you the most significant aspect of that game last night. And this has impact moving forward and long term. I thought that might have been the best game I've seen Christian Brown play all year. With the Nuggets, their biggest issue right now being health, and Christian Brown being chief among the players that they have had issues with health-wise, I think that is significant. That perhaps maybe Christian Brown now a little bit more confident in the ankle, able to do some of the things that he tends to do because he's a very explosive player, right? A lot of back cuts, a lot of dunking. So Christian Brown needs to be able to trust that ankle. And when they brought him back off of the injury list, DL, whatever you want to call it, I don't think he trusted it. And maybe physically he wasn't feeling right. Maybe he didn't attack the rehab the way that he needed to. Either way, the team says, all right, you're going to go back and take some time. And he's been back for a few games now. Still hasn't looked great, if we're being honest about it. But last night, 39 minutes, 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. That was the most impactful Christian Brown has been all season. So if this is a sign that out of the All-Star break, Christian Brown is right, that is the most significant thing beyond the good vibes that maybe the Nuggets got by picking up a win after such a rough stretch of the season. Jamal Murray, 23 points last night, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, and Nikola Jokic doing Jokic things, 26 points, 15 rebounds, and 11 assists. So you're up to date NBA standings here going into the All-Star break. The Nuggets still holding steady in third, and they've actually been able. Remember, I talked about a week or so ago about the Nuggets getting gained on by the play-in teams. Like, that's what they were losing over the last few games when Nikola Jokic came back, and they were losing still to Oklahoma City and Detroit and New York. They were losing. They weren't losing a ton of ground for the top of the West, but it was the more worrisome thing was that the bottom of the West was catching up to them. Nuggets have actually been able, because they picked up a couple of well-timed wins over the Bulls and the Memphis Grizzlies. They are now 3 games up from the play-in. The first play-in spot is held by Phoenix currently. And then but they are 7 games back of the top seed. They are 3.5 back of San Antonio for the 2 seed. But the matchup that they would have in the first round, still a lot of basketball to be played, it would be the Lakers. So maybe a chance to rekindle some of what was lost, or rekindle it now with the Luka-led Lakers. But all told, going into the break, the Nuggets, from a positional standpoint, decent spot. Now, OKC is going to be tough to reach. I don't think that the Spurs are out of the question. The difference between the 3 seed and the 2 seed is essentially home court in the second round. Can the Nuggets beat the Spurs if San Antonio has home court fully healthy? Yes, I think they can this year. But therein lies the rub. Last night was a good sign from Christian Brown. Cam Johnson still trying to figure his way through, but I wasn't going to put a ton of stock into the way he looked, considering that he was just coming back from his own injury. The Nuggets got to get healthy. They got to get healthy, and then we'll reassess the situation here for the Denver Nuggets. But they end up ending the first half of the season, first part of the season, in third, 7 games back of OKC for the top spot. But it's a little tight, 3, 4, 5, 6, separated by just 2 games. That's Nuggets, Houston, Minnesota, and the Lakers. So we'll pick things up back after the All-Star weekend and see if the Nuggets can't get a little bit healthier. But the most significant thing beyond the win, Christian Brown looked better, much better than he had since the other 2 times he came back from injury this season. 719-24-7, 13-13. If you want to give your thoughts on the Nuggets at the break, I guess the Avs and the Nuggets both sitting at their respective breaks right now. How are you feeling in the question of who do you have more confidence in winning a title this year, Denver or the Avs? Take your thoughts on that as we continue here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. So we'll table the conversation with Sam Farnsworth. We'll get him on from Italy when we have a lot of different connection points. Me remote, Sam in Italy, Ray in the studio. So we'll wait till I'm back in the studio. I'll chat with Sam a little bit and see what works, but we'll get him on to talk about what's going on over in Italy. Again, today, both Canada and the United States win in resounding fashion, and it could have been an even more lopsided score in both of those games had it not been for some goals that were overturned. Canada beats Czechia 5-0, and the U.S. beats Latvia 5-1. Brock Nelson of the Avs with a pair of goals in that win. The U.S. will play Denmark coming up on Saturday. So Ray and I have been banding about this topic for a while between us and looking for the right time to bring it up. And I think it is the right time to bring it up because today the Utah Jazz have announced that Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to miss the rest of the season. And what he is missing the rest of the season with is removing a localized pigmented velonodular synovitis growth in his left knee. It sounds made up, doesn't it? It sounds made up, especially if you have been following what is going on with the Utah Jazz right now. And let me fill you in, and then I'll get back to the Jaren Jackson Jr. of it all. So Utah, after acquiring Jaren Jackson Jr., a significant player to put with a couple of other very good players in Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George, and you think after the trade deadline, okay, the Jazz are, they're building something now. Well, they have proceeded for almost every game since to pull their best players in the fourth quarter, regardless of how the game is going. The Utah Jazz have found a higher level of tanking. They have taken one of the biggest issues in the NBA and taken it to a new level. Because they were winning a game against Orlando, sat their starters in the fourth quarter, and lost. And then they did the same thing against Miami, yet they still somehow found a way to win, leading Bam Adebayo to have the comical line after the game, although he was being very serious about it. We need to find a better way to beat teams that are trying to lose. So this is what Utah is doing. They made the move for Jaren Jackson Jr. because I guess the stars aligned, right? Memphis was ready to move on from him. Utah wanted him for the long term. They had to get him now, but they're in a little bit of a conundrum at that point because they're tanking. So they put their heads together. Will Hardy, Danny Ainge's son, who's now technically in charge of the Utah Jazz, and they came up with this gem of an idea, which is we won't violate any of the player participation policies because they'll play. It's just when the game is in the balance, they're not going to be in the game, so we lose. And I would imagine the heat got turned up a little bit on Utah, either through, public sentiment or from the league itself. And now they say, well, Jaren Jackson Jr. is out for the season. Now, I don't want to diminish anybody's injuries. Okay. But if you've been on social media today, you may have seen it labeled as a tumor. And I guess by definition, it would be. But another word to describe it would be a growth on his knee internally, right? And I think words matter. When it's described as a tumor, even a benign one, which this is, it still elicits a lot of shock and oh no, I hope he's going to be okay. This isn't from what I've been able to read this afternoon, this isn't something that necessarily could be malignant. This is an overgrowth, right? Which is what a tumor is. Overgrowth of tissue. Now, I don't know that there was, from what I have been able to glean about this, I don't know that this is, I just think that calling it a tumor, which is not what Utah called it, to be fair to them, it's other people who are saying, hey, this is a tumor. Don't take your shots at the Utah Jazz. It's a tumor. Yeah, technically it is. But was there real worry that this was something significant? Could Jaren Jackson Jr. have played through this? I think there's a chance he could have. But I wonder, and this is just me openly wondering, this is not source, this is not a report. Could there have been heat either felt by or literally put on the Utah Jazz to say, you can't keep doing this? Maybe it's just the Jazz going, we can't keep doing this. And something that is legitimate that Jaren Jackson Jr. has, maybe we'll just say now this is a season-ending injury. I don't want to get too into, how serious this thing could be. But the timing, it's hard not to be a little suspicious, right? Not saying that he doesn't have this thing, but it's like you're doing this new advanced form of tanking, and you're in a couple of weeks, and it's put you in the headlines, and it's cast the NBA in a bad light once again, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. is diagnosed with this and is out for the foreseeable future. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I hope Jaren Jackson Jr. gets back to 100% and that this doesn't cause him any problems. But come on, look at the timing of all of this. But what the Jazz are doing and have done is taken tanking into another stratosphere. And the stratosphere that they have taken it to leaves us at a point of no return. Adam Silver cannot let this continue to happen. You thought the way that teams tanked before was bad. This is next level. This is in the middle of a game that is up for grabs, that is in the balance, that a team is throwing the game. Let's call it what it is. You're taking the players that have gotten you to a point where you can win this game and you're removing them. How is that not throwing the game? You thought throwing the game was just not playing your stars. Oh no, this is could be considered throwing the game. Adam Silver cannot let this continue. And people in NBA circles are saying, well, what can they do? They're not violating the player participation policy because the Utah Jazz are never on national television. These guys are playing as a two, right? So if they hold them out of normal televised games, it doesn't qualify under the participation policy and draws the NBA's ire. And then if you play them for any amount of time, you're getting around it. The Utah Jazz are willfully circumventing the rules. And people in the NBA are saying, well, what can you do? I have a solution. And it's not going to sound like the best solution, but I think it is. Because it's a solution I have brought up before when it comes to tanking. The NBA has no choice. They just have to abolish the draft lottery and let these teams do what they're going to do and give them the pick that they earn. They have tried to curtail tanking in 18 different ways. The latest gem of an idea being, oh, we'll flatten the odds. Right? We'll flatten the odds. And what has happened? The team with the highest percent chance of winning the number one pick has fallen to 5th in the last few years. So while the NBA is going, well, mission accomplished. No, not mission accomplished. Because if I'm an organization that's trying to tank for, let's say, Cooper Flagg, and I don't get him, I'm in no better spot than I was 1 year ago. I am no closer to having my franchise player and rebuilding my team than I was 365 days ago. So what am I going to do? I'm going to continue to tank. You have to let these teams have the pick. None of us like it. We'll look down on these teams. We'll cast aspersions. We'll throw stones. We'll do all of this. But the only fix is that you have to abolish the draft lottery. And you have to give these teams that go so far beyond the pale to lose games, you have to just satisfy them by giving them the player that they want. Not in the way that Adam Silver has done it by manipulating or rigging the draft lottery, but by if these teams end up with the worst record, you give them the number one pick. Because if you don't, they're just going to continue to tank. And what the Utah Jazz are proof of is that you're not going to win. You can find them. You can institute this. The Utah Jazz, if it wasn't in such poor taste, what the Utah Jazz are doing, and if it wasn't such a stain on the NBA, what they have been doing for the last few weeks, I would actually appreciate the ingenuity and brilliance of what they're doing. Because they have looked at every rule that Adam Silver has put into place, and they have figured out a way around every single one of them. The criminals are staying one step ahead of the police. Now, I would not normally suggest a law being changed to legalize, stealing cars just because the police are having a difficult time catching the guy stealing cars. But in this case, what the NBA, they just have to give them what they want. Because the sooner you do that, the sooner they can rebuild. And in the NBA, it's not like the NFL. In the NBA, One player can make a world of difference. It can. Which is part of the reason why tanking is a thing in the NBA more than it is in any other league, because one player can change your fortune so much. You have to let them get that player. Now, there is a flip side to this, right? Because you need to, in case someone is going to go all Sam Hanky and do the process here and say, well, we have, and I'm throwing out Cooper Flag. I'm not saying Dallas, although Dallas, you could say, are they doing this? They just traded Anthony Davis, one of their better players. There has to be a limit. So what I propose is that the NBA draft lottery is abolished. You pick in the reverse order of where you finish. But the trade-off, and this is what Adam Silver and the owners go to the teams, or Adam Silver goes to the owners and convinces them and goes to the players union. The trade-off is we'll give you what you want, but you get 2 years. You get 2 years. And if you end up in year 3 tanking again and ending up with the worst record, you're not getting the number 1 pick. This is what Major League Baseball has done. The Colorado Rockies have suffered this because they are so bad for so long. This last draft, they were not allowed to pick in the top 10. MLB decided for the Rockies and these other teams, you got to get your crap together. And you have X number of years to do it. And if you come back to us with your pockets turned out and say, we're not any better, we need one of them high draft picks again, you say no. The NBA needs to do the same thing. You want to tank for a year, even 2, you'll get the pick that you earn. Earn is a weird word in this case. But you will get that pick. But year 3, or maybe even you want to be more punitive, the team that picks first, year 1, does not get a pick first, year 2. I don't care. You want to go 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, figure it out, but that's a deterrent. Because right now they think the lottery is the deterrent. It's not. The teams that are getting screwed over are just coming back the very next year in the lottery and hoping that they do better. You're not curtailing tanking with the draft lottery. And I get it. You think you can. You think that makes sense. You're not guaranteed the number 1 pick. So why would you tank? And here's a great example, recent example. Have you been following the Charlotte Hornets? So the Charlotte Hornets did not get the number 1 pick in this latest draft. They got pick number 5. And they ended up with Con Knippel. And they are one of the best stories in the NBA this year. Teams are weighing the risk reward and saying, yeah, we're trying to get the number 1 overall pick. But hey, even if we're in the top 3, the top 5, think about the draft. And this doesn't apply every single year. Think about the draft that LeBron James went in. And think about the Denver Nuggets situation. So the Nuggets, because of the draft odds and even though they had the same exact odds as Cleveland did to land the number 1 pick, which would have been LeBron James, but he somehow ends up in his hometown. That is what a weird coincidence. But think about the situation that the Nuggets still ended up finding themselves in. They dropped to 3rd. Oh no. They still ended up with Carmelo Anthony, which turned their franchise around. Think about Miami. Miami got Dwayne Wade at 5 and turned their franchise around. The Raptors turned around their franchise with Chris Bosh. There are drafts, and this year is one of those drafts, which is why you're seeing Utah go to such great lengths, and because they have their pick is protected. So if they fall out, I believe, of the top 5, they lose their pick. That's another thing that has to end. No more protections on picks. Do it like the NFL. You own our first round pick. We don't pick in the first round no matter what. But there are drafts like this one, like the 03 draft, like this past draft, where a team can still end up with the difference-making player in the top 5. So if they're guaranteed to be in the top 5, even if they fall from the top spot, it's not enough of a deterrent. And I hate this conclusion that I've arrived at. But it's the only way. They must just give these putrid tanking teams what they are tanking for. You do it like the NFL, reverse order of finish, and you tell them that in a year, 2, 3 years' time, you come back, you're not going to get that top pick. And you put it in pen and you put it in the CBA or whatever you got to do. That's the only way. These teams will keep finding new and inventive ways to skirt around the rules of the Keystone Cops. You just have to give them what they want and hope that they turn it around so that they're not back the very next year. Take your thoughts on the NBA's tanking problem taken to a new level. 719 24/7 1313. More Drive Time Sports next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. here. What do you do about tanking now that it has reached a new level with the Utah Jazz over the last couple of weeks playing their best players, sometimes winning the game, and then pulling them in the fourth quarter to help ensure that the Jazz lose and maintain their spot among the NBA's worst so they could try to get AJ DeBonsta or Carlos Boozer's kid. I think you just got to give them what they want. They're tanking to try and find a franchise changing player. We've seen it work time and time again in the NBA. Oklahoma City has done it. I mean, they're an embodiment of tanking working. Spurs got Victor Wembanyama. Cavaliers ended up with LeBron James. Like, it works. Dallas ended up in the ultimate tank job with Cooper Flagg. Although I don't know why you want Cooper Flagg over when you had Luka. But clearly that's what Nico Harrison was trying to do. I think you give them what they want. Make the draft like the NFL. And hope you don't see that team for a very long time after that. Now, there's going to be a race to the bottom, right? And, you know, a team like Utah may end up with the gasp fourth worst record in the NBA and not get the player that they want, and they may come back the next year. But that's where you put the other part of this, which is limit after a certain number of years, you can't get your top pick. No, it's better at this point. Anything's better than the draft lottery. Producer Ray Dominguez. We were talking about, like I said, we've been talking about this for a few days now. Where are you at on all of this with the tanking? Yeah, I mean, it sucks that we're even here. There are reasons why we're here, but that doesn't make it suck any less. You know, for people like Ray and I who love basketball, it's hard sometimes to love that league because there's just so many things wrong with it, and now you got your superstars that are being investors in predictive market companies and all of that. Like the NBA has just got. I would say that the NBA, there is no league right now with more problems than the NBA. And I'm sure like the concussion thing with the NFL was worse, a worse thing than tanking or call sheet. As I literally just saw an ad for call sheet. Giannis was not in it, but there have been concussions was a worse crisis for the NFL. Steroids was worse for MLB, but for a league right now with as many issues as the NBA, I don't recall a league that had the myriad of issues and problems that the NBA does. And don't forget, there is a federal case being built against a number of NBA figures, including Chauncey Billups, for feeding insider information to bettors to be able to basically defraud betting companies. I mean, that's essentially what it comes down to. But man, the NBA has so many problems. And then the All-Star game. Where are you at, Ray, with the All-Star game? Do you think it's gonna be good? Better than it has been? Mhm. Yeah, you'll hear if you have not heard those comments yet because you weren't listening earlier in the program. We'll play them during what's driving the show, and you'll hear what Ray is alluding to with Kevin Durant. Actually, that what would you pay to watch that? Can it replace the NBA Cup? Yeah, but I'm just saying, can we get rid of the NBA Cup? Well, that's the other part of it too. Why does the NBA Cup exist? Because no one cares about their games before Christmas. MLB tried to do that and we hated it because here's the thing. Like let's who would be a good one? OKC. So OKC doesn't have Shea in the All-Star game now. They have Chet, but just their best player is Shea, right? So Shea's not playing in the All-Star game. And the East wins, and now OKC doesn't have home court advantage over the Boston Celtics. We did this with MLB because MLB, the All-Star game ended in a tie in Milwaukee, and they felt like they had to do something drastic because everyone was so angry that the game ended in a tie. They made home field on the line, and then we all realized that it was terrible because teams, especially when you allow like players from the Rockies and the Tigers. Tigers are good now, but they haven't been for a very long time. Um, teams with bad that were terrible have players deciding who would host the World Series. So we decided we hated that. So in Major League Baseball, so I can't imagine in NBA that would go any better. I think it's this or nothing. You'll hear from Kevin Durant coming up next, as well as David Adelman, and we'll talk Olympics here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Thursday. I forget what day it is and I forget where I am. It's been a week, but glad to have you and thanks for hanging with me over the last few days. Back in Colorado, we'll be back in studio tomorrow for the show. My thanks to Ray Dominguez for holding things down in the Extra Sports 1300 studios. If you would like to be a part of the conversation, it's easy for you to do because there's so many ways that you can do it. You can call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. You can drop a comment if you're watching the show on our social media platforms. Or you can just yell really, really loud and see if I can hear it. Any number of those ways will work. Some more effective than others, though, if I'm being honest. Perhaps you have thoughts on these, which are the 3 stories that are driving this show. All right, let's start not necessarily in order of importance, but in order of audio. Story number 1 from Kevin Durant. You could tell that Kevin Durant had some home court advantage there. That audio courtesy of Michael Shapiro from the Houston Chronicle. Uh, the fake press laughter, little much, especially from that first woman. But the point that Kevin Durant makes is not incorrect. And I have said repeatedly on this show, because I have seen First Take and some other places take this conversation to a very a place it shouldn't be going to be quite honest. Yes, Nicole, it is not an American problem anymore about the effort level in the All-Star game. It is an NBA problem. Every superstar, regardless of the country, is complicit in making that game unwatchable. And the guys who are at the top of the list, to Kevin Durant's point, Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic. Absolutely, 100%. However, Luka and Jokic merely adopted the dark. Kevin Durant was born in it. 2014 All-Star game. Kobe Bryant is hurt. The West is up 20 in the third quarter on the East. And from that point on, the game became a farce. And every game after was a farce, except for the year that they were honoring Kobe Bryant and doing the Elam ending. Kobe Bryant was the thing that was holding this game together. Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, the list goes on, Chris Paul. These are the guys that led the generation to turn the NBA All-Star game into a farce. And they brought in Jokic and Luka, who are now the biggest offenders of this. But KD and company is where this started. They were on the court when this began. Luka and Jokic weren't. So some responsibility has to be taken in that aspect. But the bigger point here, it's not just the American players. The idea of this Team USA versus the world is supposed to get the world players to put out their best effort as well. It's not just aimed at the US. But here's the problem. You look at the two teams together and you say, if Team USA doesn't bring it, they're going to get embarrassed because they are no longer, I guess, US is still the world superpower when it comes to, basketball. They did just win a gold medal. But when you combine all of those other countries, there's no comparison. Team World is much better than Team USA. So when Kevin Durant is asked these questions, it's because if Team USA doesn't bring it and Team World does, the US is going to get embarrassed. So to me, it's Kevin Durant bringing up a good point, but not a good point when it comes to answering the question because you are the person we are supposed to be asking. You did start all of this, and you're on the side that we care most about. We want Team USA to win on Sunday. I think. Remember, we had some discussions about this during the Olympics. Do we actually want Team USA to win? I think we do. But we certainly don't want them to be embarrassed. And Kevin Durant is one of the players that's going to be most responsible come Sunday on whether the U.S. gets embarrassed or not. They're not the biggest offenders, but they started it. Let's stick with hoops here on a more local level, right? Think globally, act locally. Here's the acting locally. David Adelman, subject to story number 2. David Adelman feeling a little bit better about his team despite them playing the torn down Memphis Grizzlies 121 to or 120. Let me get the score right here. My window just closed. 122-116 was the final. And look, I'm not the last team that you should talk about, injuries and who's playing and who's not is the Denver Nuggets. Like, look, take a win wherever you can get it. If you're the Denver Nuggets with how banged up they are. Now they're less banged up than they used to be fair. I don't really care that they played Memphis either because they needed a win, to David Adelman's point. 2 losses to Detroit, a loss to OKC, a loss to the Knicks, a loss to the Cavs. They are limping metaphorically and literally speaking going into the All-Star break. So they needed a win. But I think the bigger story out of last night is the way that Christian Braun played. And Ray brought this up earlier off air. It's a good point. Christian Braun, actually, the last couple of games has been quite good for the Denver Nuggets. But last night, he scored 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. He had 20 against Cleveland the other night. I guess it's easier to appreciate the efforts of Christian Braun when it comes into victory. But he's the guy that, along with Cam Johnson, that just haven't looked right all year. So if this is now Christian Braun trusting the ankle, Christian Braun being able to operate on the ankle, then that is a huge bit of news for the Denver Nuggets as they go into the All-Star break. Mentally, obviously beneficial to get a win after you lost 3 of your last 4 games, 5 of your last 6 games, or I'm sorry, 4 of your last 5 games. I'm looking at the games that Christian Braun has played where the Nuggets have not. Nuggets haven't fared very well in Christian Braun games as I'm looking at his game log from this season. But the Nuggets going into the break had lost 4 of 5 before that Memphis win. So, yes, they needed it. But more importantly, to see one of these players who has been out come back and make a big impact is good news for the Nuggets when they come out of said All-Star break. And Christian Braun, no chance that he re-aggravates an injury because he's not an All-Star. That's not a shot. That's actually a positive thing because the Denver Nuggets can't afford another injury, especially to a guy that has already been back from injury, injured again, back from injury. So the Nuggets end the first part of the season with a win, 122-116. Our third story today, and we are not going to run afoul of the Olympics or their television partners. Just trust me on this. Team USA won today by a final of 5-1 in their first game of the Olympics. Brock Nelson was the best player on the ice. 2 goals. Could have had a third, or could, I should put it this way. Should have had 3, could have had 3. 1 was waved off due to goaltender interference. Could have had 4, but a shot rang off the post. Brock Nelson, a guy that was a third-generation Olympian, you could tell he was as excited as anybody to be out on the ice, and he was the most impactful player for a 5-1 U.S. win. Brady Tkachuk, Tage Thompson, Austin Matthews, the other goal scorers for Team USA. Canada, as you always have one eye on our neighbors to the north, they won as well, an even more resounding win because they scored 5 goals and didn't allow any against Czechia. Nathan McKinnon with a goal. Macklin Celebrini, Mark Stone, Bo Horvat, and Nick Suzuki, the other goal scorers. So far, both Canada and the U.S. look very good, and Avs players look very good. Gabriel Landeskog yesterday had a goal. Nathan McKinnon today had a goal. Brock Nelson had 2. And the irony of it all is that McKinnon and Nelson both scored on the power play, which is not what they do when they're with the Avs. But then again, as talented as the Avs are, they don't have Sidney Crosby and they don't have Connor McDavid. The McKinnon goal was Makar to Crosby to McDavid to McKinnon. So, yeah, you're not stopping that. And the Avs are never replicating that lineup on the ice at any point. So no true answers to the question that is, how did the Avs get right on the power play other than trade for both Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid? 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving this show. Not just hockey going on in the Olympics today. A couple of Americans, one perhaps with a disappointing medal and one with a medal that, regardless of the color, she should be extremely proud of it. That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. This isn't hockey. This isn't figure skating. This is extreme international ice racing where 90 horsepower monsters tear up the ice with 1,600 steel studs and zero fear. It's happening Sunday, February 21st at the Broadmoor World Arena. Buy your tickets today at axs.com. So my attention was mostly on hockey today, or my anticipation was geared towards hockey. I get super into the Olympics. I will love the Olympics. I'm watching everything, and few other things today happened around the hockey. One good and one bad. Or one bad and a couple of good. So let's get the bad out of the way first. Chloe Kim, who is the two-time reigning Olympic gold medalist in halfpipe for snowboarding, got silver today. Now, that's not bad, right? Silver medal, but she was going for the three-peat. And maybe she could call up Patrick Mahomes and learn how to cope with not getting a three-peat. But I mean, Chloe Kim is still amazing at what she does, and the fact that she's competed in this event, she's basically 3 for 3 in terms of getting medals. I'm sure she'll be a little bit disappointed that she had to get the silver instead of getting the three-peat, but Chloe Kim picking up the silver in half pipe. And then this story, which we started the Olympics really with all the discussion about Lindsey Vonn and athletes who, where is the line in terms of athletes that should compete, that old line of, are you hurt or are you injured? And we all said that Lindsey Vonn was injured, and Lindsey Vonn's like, no, I'm hurt. I'm competing. And then she got injured. But just that's kind of the tone that was set when it comes to Team USA, an athlete battling through an injury that we are accustomed to seeing no more of that athlete for a while. You tear your ACL, you're done. Lindsey Vonn said, the heck I am. So that was the tone that was set. And you fast forward to today, and Jessie Diggins, the most decorated cross-country skier in U.S. Women's history, she fights through bruised ribs to win bronze today. Feels like a gold medal, given what she had to battle through. But she ends up getting the bronze in these distances always mess with me. It's the 10-kilometer freestyle. She finishes third and then collapses in pain. But she's able to do a 10-kilometer race on skis with bruised up ribs to add to her medal collection. And she sustained the injury earlier in the week in one of her other events. And watching her collapse was both terrible and awesome at the same time, because it's terrible because she's in obvious pain. And you never want anyone to go through that, but it's awesome because of the strength that she summoned to be able to finish that race and finish in a medal position. We were talking about Lindsey Vonn, if she just, and unfortunately she didn't end up doing this, but if she just finishes a race, that's a huge accomplishment. Diggins, without as severe an injury, I grant you, but still a fairly significant injury, gutting it out and getting bronze. And it just speaks to the mentality of these Olympians, which is I only step onto my sport's biggest stage once every 4 years. It is going to take everything to keep me out and keep me from competing. You saw that with Lindsey Vonn. You see it today with Jesse Diggins. I mean, that's the Olympic spirit, right? That's why I'm a sucker for these sports that I know very little about and why I'm locked in and riveted because of that Olympic spirit that is in every one of these athletes. And Jesse Diggins showed that again today. Again, the most decorated female U.S. cross-country skier of all time. And then there was this one I wanted to get to. Just, again, kind of that Olympic spirit as well on display. So the U.S. curling team, men's curling team, unfortunately getting destroyed today. In curling, you can concede a match. You could be like, yeah, we're done here. U.S. didn't. The U.S. didn't because they wanted to make a substitution. They wanted to bring in Rich Ruohonen. I hope I said his name right. It will certainly be pronounced properly by NBC tonight on the primetime coverage. But Rich is the alternate for the men's curling team. He is 54 years old. And you want to talk about only getting a chance every 4 years. If you keep missing that chance like Rich did, all of a sudden you wake up, you're 54 years old, and you still have not competed in the Olympics. And today he got his opportunity. Became the oldest American to compete in the Winter Olympics medal event. I mean, just remarkable. And shows you all this sounds incredibly corny, but there are some times in life where corny is perfectly acceptable and something worth actually celebrating. And the fact that in a blowout loss by the U.S. curling team, that this guy at 54 years old gets to realize his Olympic dream and actually compete, that's good corny. In fact, there's a 52-year-old snowboarder for Austria as competing. Remember, this year has been like the year of the 40-somethings. Lindsey Vonn with her comeback, Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, LeBron James. All of these around 40-year-old athletes that are still showing something. And now here's a 54-year-old competing in the Olympics. And by the way, they didn't pull him out of the crowd. He was an alternate. So he earned his way to Italy. It's just that he was in the alternate spot. But the guy still was going to Italy on the team. So, stories like that are obviously why we love the Olympics. So all of that, hockey, Chloe Kim, Jesse Diggins, all of this will, I'm sure, be chronicled tonight on NBC's coverage. I have not gotten to see it yet because I'm watching all of these events live. So I'm like, why would I want condensed, edited, time-shifted stuff? And I don't begrudge anybody that is. I'm just saying if you watch it live, why are you going to watch the primetime coverage? So I haven't seen any of the primetime Winter Games coverage from NBC. But they got a lot to showcase tonight. Medal count. I was going to get to that. So U.S. is tied for second after what is this? Day 6, day 5. I had it down somewhere when I did the Olympic updates on the other radio stations. But anyway, here through Thursday, because everything's done, through Thursday, United States tied for second in the total medal count. The leaders are Italy. So they have a chance to win on their home turf. They have 17. United States and Norway are tied with 14. The gold medal count, because we're Americans and we're highfalutin, we care very much, maybe even more so about the gold medal count than the total medal count. Maybe we shouldn't be, but we are. U.S. currently tied for third with Germany and Sweden with 4 gold medals. Italy is 2 up on them. Norway has 7. So still a lot of Olympics left. I think they're just getting going with snowboarding. Men's hockey's just getting underway. Women's hockey is now into the quarterfinals. U.S., speaking of U.S. and Italy, the women's team will play Italy tomorrow in the quarterfinals. So another chance to see Hillary Knight and company. U.S. in the prelim or the round robin, 20-1. They have outscored their opponents, including Canada, who they beat 5-0 yesterday. Again, my days are getting all jumbled up. But that's where things stand out in Italy. 719-24-7. 1313. Last call for your text on this Thursday. Coming up next, perhaps you have heard the NBA looking at expansion. Why expansion could lead to the very end of one of the most fierce rivalries the last few years in the NBA. That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. So we know that the NBA is going to be expanding soon. Most likely, it will be Seattle and Las Vegas that get NBA teams, and that creates a little bit of an imbalance when it comes to the East and Western conferences. And Shams Charania was on NBA Today on ESPN talking about what that could mean. Now, we're a few years away from it, but it's significant if you're a Nuggets fan because right now, although we started to move away from this, I think that the Nuggets are done with Minnesota giving them problems, but you won't fully know that until the playoffs roll around, right? Like that's where if they happen to match up and Denver gets the better of Minnesota, then it's done. And although Minnesota would be like, well, then do we get a shot to kind of answer back at them? There's no doubt that right now, one of the few rivalries that exist in the NBA is between Minnesota and Denver. Well, the most logical candidate to move to the East would be Minnesota, given geography. So we could see one of the fiercest rivals in Avalanche history, the fiercest rival, move to the East, effectively killing that rivalry. And while I wouldn't put Minnesota and Denver on the same level as Avs and Red Wings all time, certainly right now that's the Nuggets rival. And let's be, honest, other than the Lakers, how many teams have you ever classified as a rival of the Denver Nuggets? Now, my thought is that this would have eventually ran its course. It is not a forever rivalry because there are other factors at play here when it comes to the Lakers and the Nuggets and why that is has been a bigger rivalry. But it would effectively, let's say that these two teams continue to battle in the playoffs for the next couple of years, and all of a sudden here comes Vegas and Seattle and Minnesota's gone. It would kill one of the few rivalries that the NBA has, but can't argue with the logic of moving Minnesota to the East once Las Vegas and Seattle get into the league. And by the way, I think this is one of the few times that, and I can make the argument I normally do, watering down the product, you're spreading the talent out too much. You don't need this many teams. And I would still believe that with Vegas and Seattle. But here's where I can't argue. One is we get back the Sonics. Even if it waters down the league, to get the Seattle Supersonics back is important. Two, being a frequent visitor to Vegas, as I am, there is no limit to the number of professional leagues that can have a team in Vegas and they work. I've seen it firsthand. Now, do the Raiders or the Golden Knights have the best, especially the Raiders? The Raiders have no home field advantage. Zero. I mean, it's like the Rams and Chargers playing at SoFi. But in terms of it working as a business model, people showing up to the games, generating revenue, all that kind of stuff, Vegas works. And it worked for the Golden Knights in a huge way. It's worked for the Raiders. It'll work for the A's, and it will work for the NBA team. They're just because you're just going to get fans that will make that their road trip. I see it every time, and I'm getting ready to go back to Vegas here in a couple weeks. I'm looking at the Golden Knights schedule here because I'm wondering, what teams fans I'm going to see while I'm out there. Let's see, March I will see Wild fans and I will see Oilers fans. And those are two markets that will travel, both because they are hockey crazy cities, but also because it is an excuse to get out of the normally abysmal weather that those two uh, cities have. So I'm not like I'm okay with Vegas and Seattle, as okay as I get with expansion, but it will most likely lead to Minnesota moving over to the east. So enjoy Anthony Edwards 5 times a year while you can. What else did I want to? This text. We'll get to Brett's text before I run out of time. I would rather be wide awake during my colonoscopy than watch the NBA All-Star game. Okay. So Team USA versus Team World, not doing it for Brett. Still not going that route. I'm gonna watch it. Like I probably watch some of it anyway because my job. I'm still holding on to a little bit of hope that it will be worth the watch. And then this coming down from college football today, a judge has ruled, and I'm not surprised. Judge has ruled that Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback of Ole Miss, can play this upcoming season. Why am I not surprised? Not because I am a legal genius, but because the next time a court says a college athlete cannot compete will be the first time. Diego Pavia, Trinidad Chambliss. Do these judges ever rule against these NCAA athletes? Like, I'm legitimately asking. I cannot recall a time in the last few years when all of these challenges came in where a judge ruled against the athlete. Not surprised at all that Trinidad Chambliss is going to be able to play. There's a viral video going around from the testimony today. Joe Judge, who's an assistant on the Ole Miss staff, most famous for being a flameout of a head coach with the New York Giants. So he's talking. I don't even know. I got to look at the context. I have no idea why he's bringing this up when Trinidad Chambliss is trying to be ruled eligible. So I'm very excited to go down that rabbit hole and figure out why Joe Judge was on this subject. But so Joe Judge is talking about how he tells the pregnant partners of his players that they need to focus on football and there will be no midnight feedings. For a guy that had that mindset, apparently, you really think he would have done better as a head coach, wouldn't you? Like, I didn't know where to begin when I watched that video. First of all, I don't know that anyone needs to do this study, but the number of pregnant partners has had to have gone up in college football, not because of any behavior, but because all of these guys are now older than I was when I had children. Like all of these guys have been in college forever. But also the fact that that has to be a conversation and also that that's the conversation you have. Like I don't even know what is my bigger takeaway. The fact that this discussion has to happen more in recent years, or that Joe Judge has the conversation and it goes that way, telling the pregnant partners that you need to allow your partner to be able to focus on football. I'm sure this will go very well for Joe Judge, and I'm sure it's gone well already. And there are thousands of people on social media that are voicing their support for the views of Joe Judge, which might have been okay in 1955. Good Lord, dude. Really? The more like, and look, everybody's lives are their lives. Okay. I'm not here judging. I'm just saying if there's a piece of advice that you think would be a little bit better than telling the pregnant partners of these players you need to let them focus on football and no midnight feedings, how about you tell your players that maybe while they're in college is maybe not the best time to have a child? Like maybe that would be the best piece of coaching that Joe Judge has done recently is to urge his players, you know what? Don't have kids right now. Wait till after your 10th year of college football and then go ahead and start your family. But no, it's the pregnant partners of the players. You need to take care of it while they focus on playing football. Oy, oy, oy. Joe Judge, an American classic. That dude. Classic? I don't know that that's the word I want to use, but I'll use it anyway. What else? What else? I think that's everything. Canada and US hockey, big blowout wins. Nuggets end the first part of the season on a high note. So yeah. That's all I got, except for this. Very important. Oh, Ray, reminding me, just because we don't pay off these things, we talk about these stories and then we don't follow up. Cortland Sutton took to social media today saying that chapter closed post that he had yesterday is about chapter 8, which coincides with 8 years of his NFL career. As we said on the show yesterday, nothing to see here and there, straight from the source, Cortland Sutton. I'm not cut. The season just ended. Now, to a very important thing that I want to bring you. There are times, guys, where you kind of look at what you do during the day and you're like, this used to feel a little bit easier because maybe your energy isn't the same. Recovery takes longer than it should. And maybe your motivation just feels less than it has been in the past. It doesn't happen overnight. It builds until you finally stop and wonder what's changed. And what's changed may be your testosterone levels. That's why Synergetics and Low T Center can be worth checking out. They offer a free testosterone test, which gives you real information about your energy and hormone levels. If things are out of range, they can walk you through TRT. That's pharma grade, personalized, and designed to keep levels stable. They also offer peptides and GLP-1s for recovery, weight management, and overall performance with discounted options right now. And because they work with most insurance, getting answers is more accessible than most guys expect. If you're ready to feel like your best self again, book a free test at synergetics.com or lowtcenter.com. That's it for the show. My thanks to Ray and for you for listening. Back in studio tomorrow at 3 here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300.